Welcome to another vintage fishing reel service video. In this episode we have a Daiwa Minicast Gold, and this one's kind of a interesting one and maybe popular with collectors because of the unusual this wheel here associated with the crank handle. And the purpose of that wheel is to allow you to basically override the anti-reverse and use this as sort of a manual drag, so that when the fish pulls line, this moves backwards and you can use your thumb to control the drag on the fish. You don't want to use that and you just want to use the built-in drag, you can just turn the anti-reverse back on, and then the drag will be according to whatever you have this built-in drag set at. So at any time you can flip off the drag and fight the fish with the drag of your thumb. Now this one was introduced right around 1977, and I don't know how long they produced them, but it's really stiff. I mean, it is really grease bound, and so this one's in major need of a servicing, and I assume that it's going to be very similar to the Minicast one, the silver one. So I'm going to go ahead and get into this by unscrewing the cover and holding on to the handle and counterclockwise turn and removal of the spinner head. You can see the pickup pin there. It's a single pickup pin. The rubber line brake or line stop is in good shape, so those things can go in the parts tray. We then got this horseshoe shaped C-clip that we need to remove. Very similar to the Minicast one, or the little silver cast or whatever they call it. And then underneath there you've got a thick, I'm just going to try centering that. It wants to get caught in the groove that the C-clip was in, so center that, pull it off along with the spool. But that's a really thick, I don't know if it's fibrous, I don't think, it might just be a big thick piece of Teflon. I don't know what it is, but that's a drag washer. And then you've got another drag washer on the other side of the spool, and then all of this old line we need to get off of there. So that can go in the parts tray. And then you've got a pressure plate down here. It just slides off of there. I should have had that drag turned down. I didn't. I always forget to do that. But before you take off the C-clip, you should always have that drag turned down all the way, because that reduces the pressure on the C-clip, makes everything easier to get off. But at any rate, this has a little tab on it that fits into the slot on the drag screw and so on. So that can come out. And there's your, boy, that thing looks like it. I don't know. Is that thing bent? I'll put this back in. I was looking at my drag clicker, and I was just curious if that was bent. I don't know. It seems bent awful. It seems, I don't know. It just seems bent to me. A bit oddly, at least. I know it's supposed to come up, but I don't know. At any rate, it's fine. All right, so now I don't see any reason why we can't take off the handle. So we're just going to remove this. That was pretty loose. Remove this fastener here, and then there's a little star-like, somewhat star-like lock washer and then off comes that apparatus there. Now this here is spring loaded, and the idea is that when you're going to use that thumb drag and your thumb's here, you don't want this hanging out in the way. So when you're winding it, it's out like that, and then when you're using the thumb drag, that springs back, and so it's out of the way of your thumb when you're using the thumb drag. So that's pretty tight. That needs to be lubricated and cleaned up, but that can go in the parts tray. So now we can take off the side plate by removing these two screws. Yeah, and it's just like a geode. You never know what you're going to find when you split them open, how dirty or whatever they're going to be. It's always kind of fun to peer into it for the first time in what may be decades since this thing has been serviced. Maybe have never been serviced. So here's your thumb button, and I want to get up underneath there and clean. And so to get that off, you just simply need to remove this E-clip here, which can be interesting. Kind of put your thumb in the way so that if it does pop off, it doesn't fly across the room. But you get that E-clip off of there. And then this, well, shoot, I forgot about it. I got this badge here. And to get that pin out, the last one I didn't, the badge was missing. I'm just going to push up on that. I'll have to glue it back down later. But I'm going to push up on that badge till I get that pin out. So this thing pops up off of there. And I'll just glue that back down, but that's where that pin and stuff goes. So I put that in the parts tray. And now this one, it has a helical pinion gear. So you can't you can only back it out so far as the top of the main gear, and then it's not going to want to come out. So you have to take and get this spring. There's no clip or anything up here. You just have to, without boogering it up, just grab a hold of that last spiral on the spring with your fingernail or something. This one's not going to be as nice as the last one, I can tell you that. Might have to use a screwdriver. But you want to get this spring to pop up over the end of that without shooting it across the room. Keep hold of it so don't shoot across the room. And don't booger it up so that when you put it back on there, it'll hold. So that, then you got your spring off of there. Then you can take and push this shaft. Come on, get out of there. And off, and then get your pinion gear out of there. And that's interesting. It seemed like on the silver Minicast, the pinion gear was sort of beveled on one side and flat on the other. This one looks to be flat on both sides. But there's your plate and your axle shaft, pretty nasty, greasy. And then that'll allow you to get your main gear out. And that's just real sticky, hard, nasty grease. That's going to soak in some WD-40 to loosen that up. There are at least one, I think two, shim washers here you got to keep in mind. You don't want to lose those. They're really thin. There's two shim washers on the back side of that main gear. And a lot of crusty old grease. So that can go in the parts tray. Now you can take apart this anti-reverse, but unless you see it, oh, this came off of this little shield came off of where the handle goes in. But you could take this out of this anti-reverse mechanism, but unless there's really a good reason to, I don't think it's necessary for servicing. So you've got a spring over a post here, and then it comes around, looks like it wraps around another post, and then it goes underneath this screw here and rests against the upper part of the housing. And so that's your anti-reverse switch. So you don't really need to mess with that. You can clean that and lubricate that without taking it off. Inviting trouble taking that off in terms of trying to get it back together again. Of course, always take pictures if you want to do that, but I'm not going to do it right. It's not necessary. This one is so we're going to take off this drag screw and the drag wheel. And this one is not reverse threaded, so it's simple. You hold on to the drag wheel and turn counterclockwise and run that drag screw out of there. And we want to clean that up and lubricate it, and that'll make that drag wheel move much more nicely. And then that just pops out of there. And that can go in the parts tray. So at that point, teardown is complete, and we're ready to throw all of these things into the parts tray and run to the sink and use WD-40 as sort of a solvent to soak some of these things in to get that dried grease to loosen up, get all that off. Then get some Dawn dishwashing soap and a toothbrush and some cotton swabs. Make sure you get down into all these channels with cotton swabs and some kind of solvent, and that'll make things move a lot more smoothly. So I'll be off to the sink to clean these, and I'll be back just like that. All right, let's get all these pieces out here. I did notice that there was a washer when I took this apart that was stuck down in there. So keep an eye out for that. All right, let's start putting this thing back together. And we can begin with lubricating the anti-reverse pivot points. Maybe sneak a little down in there. Work that in. And then we want our main gear, and we want to make sure not to forget these shim washers that go on the back side. And then we're going to want to take and grease the cogs on the anti-reverse gear and pack the teeth of the main gear. And then oil the shaft of the main gear and turn off your anti-reverse and slink that down in there. And then we can, I'm going to oil that or grease that pinion gear after I put in the axle shaft and so on, because it's tiny and hard to hold on to. So, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Huh. It's only D-shaped on one side. The other side, that thing, see how that's round there? And then it's D-shaped on that one. That's kind of interesting. But I'm going to put that on there. till it slides up on there. And then get this spring and slip that over it. Then carefully, without shooting that across the room, work your way down and get your fingernails on that last couple of spirals on it and pull it over the tip of the thing. Then that'll stabilize our pinion gear enough. Whoa, hey, ho. That's a little too much grease. And just pack the tears of that teeth of that pinion gear. We can also now put in our drag wheel. So we just slide that in there. And then we're going to oil the threads on the drag screw. And then this one is not reverse threaded, so just hold on to the wheel and turn clockwise until it's flush or below flush. And at that point, I think we're ready to put on the side cap, but we've got to address this button because I was wanting to get underneath there to clean, which meant that I had to pop this badge up a little bit here, which means I'm going to have to glue that back down, but I'm going to have to pop it up enough to get this pin back in there. And then I think I'll wait and glue that on at the end. I'm going to just pull that badge off for now. It's got a bunch of gunk underneath there anyway. So I got that pin into our thumb button. And you just want to slink that back in there into that oval. And then we got to get that E-clip back around that pin. That E-clip is sprung. That E-clip is sprung. Well, this will be fun. Trying to tighten that without it being so tight that we have a hard time getting it back on. Just gonna pinch that a tad. Well, there it went. Well, wasn't that fun? Never did find it. Luckily I had another one from the hardware store. I ended up buying two when I only needed one the other day, just in case something like that happened. But I knew better ones on there anyway. So now we can put this side plate on. You got to get this, and it wouldn't hurt to put a little grease where that button contacts the axle shaft. And so just get that on there like that. All right. I'm going to go ahead and put my badge back on there, and I'm going to use, this is a metal piece, but I'm going to use something that's a little more reversible than super glue. I'm going to use some goop, which is I think it's kind of like E6000, but it's almost kind of like a rubber cement type stuff, and it stays flexible. So I'm just going to put a little bit of that on there. And that takes care of that. Now we can start putting our handle assembly back on. We've got this sleeve here, and then we have the actual, this is keyed, the actual handle and thumb drag, and then we've got this washer, and then this screw. Lubricating that spring handle really improved its performance. I mean, that thing really springs back now, which it wasn't doing very easily to start with. And boy, does that move so much better than it did before. It's not bound up like it was before. So now we can get that drag screw parallel with the outside of the housing and lay the pressure plate in, that little tab on the pressure plate in there, and we can just put a little grease on that, not much, just a light coating. And then we've got I'm going to just add grease to the drag washers just with my fingers, just a little light coating there, and slide that down. And then we're gonna grease the spindle and the top of the spindle to reduce wear on the pickup pin mechanism. Drop our spool down. Drag clicker's working. Grease this up a little bit, just with the fingers. Put that into place. And then we're ready for the horseshoe clip. Oops, confound it. I forgot that little star washer. Now, put some oil around this pin and up inside that nylon block. Work that in, and then a little around the base of the block where it rides against the spinner head. Lubricate that all up good. And then a clockwise turn of the spinner head until it's firm but not ungodly tight. And then we're ready to screw the well, we could have at least checked the drag, although I know it will work. But in this one, the lowest setting of the drag, you turn this wheel to the right. That means it's on the lowest drag. That's a little backwards compared to many, and that has to do with the fact that the threads on that drag screw aren't reversed. And then turning it that way tightens it up until it's hard to even move. So drag's working fine, as one would assume, given how simple that works. Put the spinner head on, screw her cap on, get all these glue and tools out of the way. And wipe the oil off of her a little bit. And you have a completely serviced, working like new. Anti-reverse is working, override's working. Circa 1977 Daiwa Minicast Gold. Pretty much, as far as I can tell, pretty much the same thing as the silver Minicast 1 or silver, I don't know what it was, Minicast 1, something like that. Pretty much the same reel, with the exception of this interesting manual thumb drag option. But neat little reel. If I haven't said it before, I love these micro reels, and I love fishing with ultralight micro equipment, and the lightest possible. It's just an absolute blast. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.